I was able to at least give some good confidence with, for example, the DK Metcalf injury or the Chase Winovich injury, which wasn't as clear cut, but I was able to parse out some of the things that were going on that I said, hey, this is what it could be, this is what it should be, and that kind of gave a more clear picture than ankle, neck, etc. So just reading and looking at things really kind of helped open up the doors as to what's going on.
That's awesome, and I feel like the draft is so important because these last few years, especially, we've seen players with some really bad injuries, and that can dictate where they go, and that can dictate the rest of their careers. I mean, Todd Gurley comes to mind as a player that had a horrific knee injury. That I think that knee injury, if I might be wrong on this, you'd know better than me, but I think that knee injury kind of carried over into his pro career, where that knee's kind of not that great. If it's the same knee, you might know that better than me, so I won't assume on that one.
I can't be for certain that it's the same knee. I do believe he tore his ACL back when he was with Georgia.
Right, he did, yep.
And then I know he's dealing with the knee tendonitis this season. I believe, looking at it...
It would have to be, right?
Yeah, but looking at it, they're two separate injuries.
Right.
But after the ACL tear, even with the proper rehab and whatnot, you're still at higher risk for arthritis afterwards. So you're going to see that knee deteriorating a little bit quicker than the opposite side. And of course, with all the beating that they take throughout the season in playing NFL football, you're just going to start seeing those little minor changes here and there, slowly deteriorating. Hopefully not as severe as let's say Sony Michel of the Patriots, but you're going to see just things kind of change over time where that injury back in college really does affect things. I'm sure we're going to see that most severely impact Bryce Love, for example, coming into the draft.
Bryce Love is a player that I really liked. Obviously, leading up to the injury, he was doing very, very well, and
yes.
Now it's a question mark. Whenever there's an injury that's associated with a player, it's very dicey because the National Football League now, especially with running backs, you look at some of the running backs that have been picked these last few years. Some of them have been first-round picks, like the McCaffreys, the Gurleys, the Ezekiel Elliott's. But then you have a running back like Alvin Kamara, who was a third-round pick, who is one of the best, if not the best right now. Le'Veon Bell, not a first-round pick either. So James Conner, not a first-round pick either. So running back injuries, I'd imagine, are a huge part of your analysis in what you do on a daily basis in analyzing injuries, because it seems like running backs get hurt the most. I don't know what it is. It just seems that way to me, at least.
I think it's just the contact, because I had done the positional review for the running back position for the Bills. That's my most recent article up on bangedupbills.com, and it just, of course, McCoy, he had a lot of smaller injuries, going off of specifics with him, that didn't really cause him to miss too many games, but it's just that culmination of those small injuries hitting that direct contact. Of course, they're the one getting the ball, 20, 30, 40 times a game in some cases. And then just having to shift and pivot, and just there's so many different dynamics of their position. Their pass catching out of the backfield. It just they're just at a higher rate to get hit harder and not directly on. So of course that's why you see running backs, despite the prestige of the position, they have the shortest careers, and that's why they're not willing to pay, let's say, Le'Veon Bell, because, hey, there's another guy that can run for 1,000 yards that we can pay, next to nothing, just in the case of James Conner for the Steelers. But they just take so much of beating that you either have to A, take care of your body, B, be lucky, or C, I don't know what C would be, but it just... Yeah, there just has to be more to it than
C might be actually. I know for a fact. Just from the college level of being in college locker rooms and seeing what I've seen, there are players that literally just do not listen to the nutritionist, the physical therapist. They want to just be these. It sounds kind of but they want to be like these tough guys. They want to just push through. When your body's telling you that something's not right, you better listen. It's like telling your car to, it's like not taking your car to the mechanic when the check engine light's on. It's the equivalent of that. So I find it fascinating, though, as I've looked at your Twitter throughout the years, and for the folks that are tuning in, just now, I am talking to Kyle Trimble of BangedUpBills.com. You can follow him at Banged Up Bills. And Kyle, his site is very informational. I am not a doctor. I would never claim to be. But one would say that I kind of feel like a doctor after reading some of the stuff that you write. I'm like, man, I feel educated. Maybe I could go get my PhD after this. Probably not, though. Probably not.
That's the goal of what I'm looking for, then.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely molding some minds here, though.
Hey, that's what I'm going for. Got to educate everybody, because if you educate somebody, they're gonna better understand it, and then in terms, thanks, I can't lose my train of thought here. And in turn, they're gonna then be able to apply it to different things, or at least have a better conversation with other people, or whatever they're looking to do with the information. They're going to just be a better, more well-informed fan.
Right, and I mean, now more than ever, I feel like the social media quote unquote beat is just the heartbeat of social media with sports is just thriving right now. It is as healthy as it's ever been as far as the Twitter sphere and Facebook and Instagram. You see a lot of injury reporting, but what is the one thing that you always try to do when you injury report? What are some of the boxes that you check off for yourself? I find myself checking off some boxes where I'm kind of like, I want to make sure my podcast is informational. I want to let my opinion be heard, but I want to base it around facts. What are some of the things that you like to do with your site and kind of form your writing, if you will?
I like to try to set the stage, and I want to focus on the big injuries. Sometimes there isn't that one big injury, but I try to at least, when I look at the injury, set the stage of, okay, this is the time of the play it happened. So like second quarter, 7 minutes left. Okay, so if somebody wanted to look at the video themselves, they could. I want to, kind of set the scene for them. In the case of, I'm thinking Josh Allen, for example, he got hit by Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Merciless. So you're looking, trying to, replay it in your mind, even if you can't watch a video. I try to do that with all the injuries and try to detail it out, because a lot of these injuries are such bang plays. It's easy to miss it the first few times there, without slowing it down or freeze framing it. But what I want to do in written form is to do, snapshot by snapshot, say this is what happened, this is why it happened, this is what caused that joint to give, or why the injury occurred. So while doing that, I try to give some, reference to anatomy, because I might say tibia, I might say ulna, I might say humerus. People know those words because, I would think they would have followed them in high school to some extent, but they're not going to really know where they're at or what the function or why that bone is in play, or that ligament or whatever. So I try to educate on what the function of that bone or ligament or tendon, what have you, is, and then just try to paint the picture so that somebody gets a full thing saying, this is what happens during the play, this is why that part is injured, and this is what it means moving forward based on what we know from a rehab standpoint.
I've found myself learning more about the human body actually through sports. Oddly enough, like I feel like I've learned more, whether it be from playing sports and getting hurt, or following sports and following these injuries and stuff like that. You learn a lot, especially through like combat sports. If a guy injures his his retina, or his they call it the I'm trying to think of the facial bone. I can't even think of it now. Orbital bone, yeah. And I'm like, I didn't even know what that was. And now whenever someone says orbital bone, I literally flash back to a certain fight in the UFC when a guy broke his orbital bone. So there's a lot of information to be learned, because I feel like we're really only at the cusp of that. I feel like what you do is truly, and I'm not saying this just to quote unquote kiss your ass, pardon my French, but I'm saying it in a way because I feel like what you do is very innovative. There's not many injury beat, if you will, or injury information out there. And I'm really glad you brought it up because I think what a lot of my viewers and listeners will be keying in on is the Josh Allen injury in this case. And, I've talked to you about Josh Allen. I think the dude's a stud. I think he's going to be good for a long time in this league, barring any injury setbacks, of course, which hopefully you don't have to report on any Josh Allen injuries from now until the last day he plays. Hopefully this guy stays completely healthy. But for now, what were your thoughts on the injury that he experienced? Initially, there were some big-name reporters saying that it was very Tommy John surgery-esque, Tommy John-esque, because that injury was named after Tommy John, the baseball player. So what were your thoughts on that? As far as covering that and being aware of the injury, take us through that process of learning about Josh Allen's injury and reporting on it.
So I remember watching the game. I remember seeing where he got hit, and okay, no big deal. He got hit. He got back up playing. So the fact that he's able to go take a play afterward really kind of, tempered what was going on. You didn't think anything of it. Okay, he got right back up. Okay, whatever. And then you see him kind of wince at the throwing the football, and then he comes out, and they're saying, well, his elbow got hit. Okay, well, people get hit all the time. No big deal. Year after the game that, elbow contusion, okay, once again, no big deal. It wasn't until the Thad Brown video came out and the trainers are assessing his elbow and they put him into what we call a valgus stress test. So they're looking to put pressure on the UCL ligament, which is the Tommy John ligament, and they're taking the arm back and put pressure on it and bend the elbow. And, of course, if anybody looks at the video, he drops down to nearly his knees and in severe pain. So at that point, thinking, man, this is something more than an elbow contusion. And that's where kind of the floodgates broke open and everybody started talking Tommy John. And, of course, that scared all of the fan base because everybody knows Tommy John in baseball. You're out for a long time. But due to the throwing mechanics of throwing a football, the significant reduction in the amount of times football players throwing football versus a baseball player, the speed and at the angle that they're doing, there's a lot of differences.
Sure.
Yeah, which led to the favorable outcome that Josh Allen had with his recovery. It was more just a general sprain rather than we're talking season-ending injuries. So the other big thing was waiting for the MRI report to say that, hey, this thing, yes, it's a sprain, but it's not completely torn. So once we got that, it was like, okay, this is bad, but it could have been worse, and it's certainly not as bad as it could have been regarding baseball. So I had to learn just like everybody else as information came out, but it definitely constantly, the process was always evolving based on the information I was getting at the time.
I find it fascinating too because that is so on point because throwing a baseball is completely different as a pitcher than a quarterback throwing a football. The body angle is different. The positioning of the ball, release point is different. I mean, if you really look at a pitcher throwing a baseball, he's throwing that ball somewhat downhill because he's on a mound, whereas a quarterback is flat on his feet, upright, trying not to get hit. Or in Josh Allen's case, in the case of that injury, he was being heavily pressured by the Texans' pass rush, and he was just trying to fit a ball in a tight window, and ultimately the elbow, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, didn't the elbow land on a helmet?
Yes, it did. It did.
So
Merciless came up right underneath and hyperextended the elbow, but that direct blow to that area is what led to all that in the first place, between the hyperextension and the direct blow.
One area that I find fascinating that I'm sure you really dive into is outside of injuries, like the case of that Josh Allen injury. I remember where I was watching it. I remember where I was for every game this season because I watch the games at the same exact place every single week. So watching that, thinking, okay, this is a hit that was not necessarily needed, and the play was already kind of over when he got hit. Did you think that there would be a flag on that play, and were you shocked when there wasn't?
Thinking back now, I mean, you always want a flag when there's a questionable call, but, I mean, it was kind of a bang-bang play. He did get rid of the ball at that time. Yeah, he probably should have gotten a flag in retrospect, but, you know, we've seen the refs obviously make more egregious errors with penalties, but it was such a bang-bang play, I don't know if it would have necessarily warranted it in real time, but, you know, that's where they look to see whether they change things going forward in the future. But we've seen them do worse, such as the Rams-Saints playoff game, so,
right.
Yeah.
And you were one of the first people I thought of, to be quite honest with you, when that play came about, because I don't know if that player was injured on that play, but he easily could have been.
Yeah.
And what is your stance on that? Because that's very interesting, because in your case, it's like you obviously don't want to see dirty hits. You want to see the game played well and fair, and you want to, but at the same time, it's like you want to see football be football. You do want to see hard hits because it's football. But at the same time, you're somebody that evaluates injuries, so it's almost like most dirty hits do result in injuries. So it's almost like the dirty hits kind of make more work for you, right?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, looking back at the Nickel Roby play, I mean, that was just a football play. He admitted to it. Yeah, that was pass interference. That was just a pure football thing. Yeah, there was a risk of being injured, but you could make a case that every single player on every single play has risk for being injured. So I really wasn't worried about injuries, A, because it wasn't the Bills, and B, it was more just I can't believe that wasn't called. But, you know, of course, when you see those dirty hits and you're like, crap, that means not that I don't want to do that, but I got to go back and look and see what happened, because depending on angle, that might tell me something, you know, and then you look it over, let's say all 22, that gives you another angle, what's going on, what the reports are afterwards. So you really have to kind of keep your ear to the ground after those plays to try to figure out what happened and how it's going to affect them moving forward.
It's definitely, I feel like your analysis of the college players and the Buffalo Bills, I think they're going to go hand in hand. I get a feeling that some of these guys that you've evaluated already might end up being, hopefully not banged up Bills, but hopefully Buffalo Bills. Hopefully they're not banged up as Bills. But what would you think if Buffalo did decide to go with like a Bryce Love or someone that like a DK Metcalf? A DK Metcalf could be quite possible, you know, in this 2019 NFL draft, and that's a name that I've linked to the Bills a lot, and it's a name that a lot of other pundits out there have linked to the Bills. What would your thoughts be if they were to go down that road of taking a player that has had a significant college injury? They've done it before. Willis McGahee is one that definitely comes to mind. What would you think about that?
I mean, I know that if they're going to go down that road with a significant injury such as that medical staff has done their homework, and the coaching staff and front office are very comfortable with that player despite the injury. They're not going to take a flyer on somebody, I mean, unless it's 7th round, but that's different, you know. But first round, they're going to make sure they do all their homework and make sure that player is going to be healthy and will produce and do whatever that they can to be ready. So despite all the stuff you see with Bryce Love, DK Metcalf, I think it's going to come more down to skill. You know, going back to DK, I don't like him going to the Bills at 9, not because I don't think he's talented. I just think that I'm more gun shy after seeing the whole Sammy debacle. I mean, the injury that DK sustained was pretty minor. It just, when people see neck or back, everybody gets worried about it. But you've seen guys produce at very high levels despite, different injuries. If you read that article, I talk about what I thought was going on, and it's kind of a non-issue at this point. But I just think the Bills be wasting their time and effort to draft him that high. If he fell for some reason, yeah, let's go for it. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. You keep going.
Yeah. All right. So as for Bryce Love, I mean, we've seen a lot of guys tear their ACLs and still come out in productive careers. Going back to what you said, the Willis McGahee. However, we've also seen on the opposite side that the tight end from Michigan, Jake Butt, he tore his ACL, I think, once or twice in college. No, once in college, and then since then in the pros, he's torn twice. I know he wasn't a super high draft pick of the Broncos.
He was a good college player, though.
He's very good college,
right.
And he just hasn't been able to stay healthy because he hits all the risk factors to re-tear, and unfortunately, he's like the poster boy for re-tearing despite having top-notch medical staff. It's just kind of unlucky in his sense, but I don't think that the staff are going to put people or the team in harm's way to draft a player that isn't going to be able to produce. The only time that I know the Bills got anywhere close to that was the Shaq Lawson draft, and they find out later he had a shoulder injury, which really wasn't a big deal. It hasn't affected him since then, but it was kind of like that wasn't a smart decision to get a guy with an injury like that. He had the labral tear, and his arms were so vital to get around the edge there. It's like, why would you do that? But we saw how Doug Whaley, where he's at and stuff. So,
well, yeah, Kyle, I am so glad you said that. I am so glad that you brought up, you just eloquently stated. So, first off, I agree with you 100% on the DK Metcalf scenario. You're kind of taking some spoilers away from the next Thomas Take episode, but I will just let the cat out of the bag. I like DK Metcalf a lot. I think he'd be a great fit on the team.
Absolutely.
They definitely need a wide receiver like him, but taking a wide receiver in the top 10 just makes me shiver in fear of that guy becoming the next Sammy Watkins. And if they took him in the 15 to 20, if they traded down, which frankly I think they should do that, not just whether they get DK Metcalf or not. I don't think, if it were up to me, there would be a 100% chance that I would not be picking at 9th overall if I was the GM of the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, well, we saw that happen with Trey White, 2 years ago? I mean,
2 years ago, right.
Complaining about the Patrick Mahomes thing, but I think we're in a good position with regards to that. So it's like, trade back, you get extra picks, get the guy that's going to fit your roster better than
you need bodies at this point. You don't need one player. You need bodies. You need depth. I mean, there are units of their franchise that need massive overhauls. Most of those, one unit in particular is vital to our quarterback having a sustainable, long career. And that's the guy that we want to see get protected and not on the banged up Bills report. But you mentioned too that, DK Metcalf would be good. Bryce Love, I think, is possible. I think that they're way more interested in adding a running back than what people realize. Because
they have to get somebody, and it's going to be later on, because what we have right now isn't the answer moving forward. Marcus Murphy's too old. He's shown he's not as durable. Keith Ford is a UDFA.
Right.
He did all right, but he's not the answer. So they're going to have to address it in the draft. But I can see them going the third, fourth round and still getting a stud. I mean, Bryce Love could be great. They don't need anybody right now with McCoy on the team, but get Love up to speed, get him healthy, and I can see them going somewhere with that.
One name that I'm definitely going to be linking to the Bills is Tevin Coleman. He's 25. If Atlanta doesn't re-sign him, he should be in high demand. He filled in for Devonta Freeman real well and was very well. Yeah, it was phenomenal for the Falcons. So they paid. I believe they paid Freeman already. So
they did. Yeah.
So I'm pretty certain that Tevin Coleman will be a free agent. Hey, Tevin Coleman, if your agent is listening, if you're listening, please come to Buffalo. I'd love to have you.
He would be a nice addition. He's a very nice change of pace back, and I'm not sure of his injury history without looking it up, but he was pretty durable,
relatively healthy. Right.
Yeah, considering all the issues that Freeman had, he's able to step up and do pretty well. I know the guy behind him, Ito Smith, because I have him in fantasy, did step up and play.
Ito Smith or whatever.
Yeah, he was able to play.
I called him Judge Ito Smith, like Judge Ito from the from the OJ trial.
Yeah, but I know Coleman. He did. I think the worst he had concussion, but he wasn't having the issues that Freeman did. So having another nice change of pace back would be great for somebody from McCoy. Coleman could fit that a lot better than I think Ivory would be right now. Anyway,
I had today. If I were to take you through just my day today, I had Bills fans throughout the country, that I talk to every once in a while, talking to me about how Doug Whaley. I think when you really look at the drafting, when you look at a lot of the chances that he took, I see him as the worst Bills GM of this century. And I know that's a big statement because there's been so many other ones that have been bad. But with Tom Donahoe, he did bring in some big-name free agents. He did, fill that defense. They had London Fletcher. They had Takeo Spikes. They had Lawyer Malloy, Troy Vincent, Drew Bledsoe. I mean, he was able to bring in some big-name players at that time, which is not common in Buffalo.
Yep.
Doug Whaley, though, I mean, there's not much there, right?
He swung for the fences. I think the best that he did was he was great at pro personnel. I mean, you saw that with LaShawn for Kiko. You saw that Jerry Hughes for Kelvin Shepard. I think that's his name.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah,
he did do some great player-to-player trades and pro personnel, but drafting, he just had no idea what the hell he was doing. And obviously, we're still digging out from the hole that he created.
The fact that people were saying, though, that, I mean, I could even show you the thread, and you're saying this now, you're the injury expert. I said that they drafted Shaq Lawson knowing fair well that he had that shoulder injury. That's why they were able to take him there. If Shaq Lawson's 100% healthy in that draft, he's not getting picked 19th overall.
Yeah.
Right?
Though if you see what he did over the past few years, you wonder whether he's a first-round pick, but that's hindsight.
And that might be, too, that could be the fact that coaches have changed, different schemes, different roles, and I think mentally he is finally starting to regain his, funk, get out of the funk that he was in due to the fact that he had, the Jerry Sullivans of the world, black. I mean, that I get it. I get writers got to write, and there's always a story, but the players say they don't pay attention to that, but would you say that they do for the most part?
It's impossible not to pay attention to it. You can't, you don't have to read word for word, but all you need is a headline of 8 words and holy cow, then it gets you thinking so yeah, you might not focus on it, but there's no way you don't pay attention to it. Right.
And especially when you have cameras and microphones in your face in the locker room and they're saying, hey, did you see that article about you, about how you suck? And it's like, this guy was the ACC sack leader, defensive player of the year that he was drafted. So I think they'll bring him back. I know he's got a 9 to 10 million cap hit with the fifth option year?
Yeah, I say you bring him back. I think he'd be foolish because he was so productive, and he's been overall pretty good. He's had some injuries, but nothing crazy. He says, don't cut him loose. Right. I say you bring him back and give him another shot. So
now, as far as you do a lot of, obviously you do all Bills stuff. As far as your fandom of the Buffalo Bills, for the fans out there that are listening and everything that are diehard Bills fans, take us through your Buffalo Bills fandom. When did it start, and what are some of your favorite fan moments of being a Bills fan, or least favorite? I'm sure there's those too.
Well, all right. So I became a Bills fan, and I'd say probably 2007, because I remember I came up to Buffalo in 2006. That's when my freshman year was, and I'd watch football, but I wasn't really following the Bills, and this was during the Dick Duran years, 3 straight years, 7 and 9. And I looked at it as 7 and 9, and at the time I followed more the 49ers, and they were 2 and 14. They were god awful. And I said, well, I said, okay, well, I can't follow this awful football team anymore. 7-9, that means they're going to turn the corner. I think I'm going to hop on the bandwagon here. I'm going to be here.
Oh,
10 years later, I'm still waiting. I blame Dick Draw and Skeletor for my fandom, but I mean, I'm happy that I'm a Bills fan. So that's kind of what got me hooked. And then when we drafted Paul Leslie, because I'm a big Penn State fan, so I said, Paul Leslie, Penn State. I'm in Buffalo.
I love
Let's
Paul.
go for it. So, I going off of the good and bad moments. I know one of the top moments was being in the stadium. I was working for a fundraiser and watched us beat the Patriots in 2011. That was awesome to watch. Obviously, the biggest fan memory is us making the playoffs. I mean, I was absolutely ecstatic being at 716 and just body checking everybody around me, just cheering. Mm-hmm. So, there's obviously a lot of good moments as a Bills fan. I don't even know if I want to go down the road of bad Bills moments. I mean, it'd be, the Stevie Johnson miscatch against Pittsburgh. We all remember that.
Yeah, and he blamed Jesus on that one. That was a little odd.
Yeah. Like that was bad. I was at the game too. Everybody started cheering. They got quiet, and you look at the replay. That's not good. That's not good. And I mean, of course, there's countless Patriots games where we lost, and so it's like the ups and downs. But I realize I'm in it for the long haul, and I'll be ready when we finally figure it out. So
I know I'm ready, and I can tell you this: I say this with the utmost sincerity. I am dead honest. If I see something, I say it however I feel, and I've never been more confident as a Buffalo Bills fan. I've actually never been more proud to wear any of the thousands of Buffalo Bills clothing items that I have in my other closet that is just strictly Buffalo Bills clothing. Nothing else is in it. That's how much I have. I've never been so excited to wear that stuff. I am so over the moon with the whole regime that they have. The quarterback, I think, was the right fit. Would you say so?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Josh Allen coming out originally, because I was like, no, this isn't good, because I was all Josh Rosen. But I mean, he's a good fit for the city, and he played very well. And, of course, you see how some of the other guys, kind of played out, and it's like, wow, we really got the right guy. I mean, the only guy that did just as well was Baker Mayfield, but let Cleveland deal with him. He's too bombastic for what Buffalo is.
I completely agree. Agree.
So, I mean, Josh Allen's a great fit now, and I think he's going to be the guy moving forward there. But, that's why those guys are getting paid in the front office, and we're the one paying for the tickets.
Right, and I really dove into that quarterback class because I was convinced that they were going to get one of those guys. I just didn't know which one. And in looking at all the little dynamics of it, the things that you see in movies like Draft Day with Kevin Costner, that was a little over embellished, but there are little things that the evaluators evaluate that are like, what? Is that a thing? That's probably part of the reason why Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. But in a way, with Josh Allen, one thing I noticed at the Senior Bowl was you had all these quarterbacks on display. Josh Allen was one of them. And one quarterback might have Adidas shorts on, another quarterback might have Nike shorts on, or maybe like Wilson or whatever little brand that they have. Josh Allen comes out onto the field, and he's wearing these brown and yellow shorts. And I'm thinking to myself, these are the ugliest shorts I've ever seen in my life. I would never wear those. And then I was like, oh, duh, those are his college shorts. He was representing his school while on the NFL, display, so to speak. And I thought to myself, that was a quality that really kind of just jumped out at me. I thought, that's different. I've never seen a guy do that before. In warm-ups at the Senior Bowl, wearing, representing his... I mean, he obviously had the Wyoming helmet on when he was playing, but those other guys weren't wearing their college shorts. And he kind of just has this old school... just kind of good old boy kind of I don't want to say charm because it sounds kind of weird, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it is. The mentality of, I know that these people don't think I'm going to be as great as a guy from UCLA or USC, but he's proud that he actually had the struggles that he did have. You know, he didn't have a single scholarship offer, had to go to a junior college. The whole story is pretty fascinating when you really look at it, that Buffalo saw something in him that I think was beyond his ability, which we know that's there, but they saw a personality trait that you can't teach that.
Absolutely. But that all ties back to what you were saying before, that you're proud to wear the Bills stuff. He was proud to wear Wyoming, but
right.
Like that kind of thing you want to see. He's proud to wear the Bills hat when he's out west in California or wherever he's at. Like, hey, I'm Buffalo Bills and this is who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was kind of where I was going with it too. Like, I'm proud to wear my team's colors, and I mean, there's times where I still wear my wrestling jacket or whatever that has a little logo on it or whatever from when I wrestled in high school and a little bit in college. But it's crazy that there's a guy here that I felt like I had always been waiting for Josh Allen. In a way, like the years that he wasn't even, the years that he was, he's only a couple years younger than me, but the years that he was in junior high, I'm like, man, that's the quarterback that I want, but I didn't know it was him. You know what I mean? Like, yes. It's so weird how that stuff works out, but hey, I'm thankful.
Same here.
Like you said, Mayfield, too bombastic for Buffalo, right?
Let Cleveland deal with them. I hope he does well for Cleveland, but he wouldn't have been a good fit for Buffalo in hindsight. Maybe, but probably not.
What do you think of Josh Rosen thus far? I know that his offensive line is a disaster. There'll probably be a point where you'll be writing something about him. I have a feeling related to an injury. What do you think of Rosen so far, though? Do you think that he will end up being as legit as people thought, or do you think it'll end up being not so much?
I'm leaning toward not so much. I mean, obviously things can change. He has some weapons that Josh Allen doesn't have, such as Larry Fitzgerald, and I'm trying to think what the other guy
Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk, yes, yep. That's who. Yep. So he does have some weapons there, but I mean, obviously they have to get the offensive line going with him because I heard that they spent like $2 million total on the offensive line, which is ridiculous to think about, that they spent so little to protect their franchise quarterback. But he might be one of those guys that is good, but just never really taps into it, kind of like a Jay Cutler. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, I'm here, I can play, but it just, you don't get the sense that he's going to fight everything, every part of his being to be the best. There, it's kind of like, I'm good, and this is kind of how it is. But
I get that feeling too. I get the feeling that he says, "I know I'm good. What I have is good enough." And it's like, well, that's a terrible mindset. I mean, what Tom Brady had originally wasn't good enough, and that's why he's Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's kind of where I'm seeing it with things. And then, of course, we'll see how injuries play out with all these different guys. But it's going to find just how that all works out. But Rosen, he might just be good, but never great.
Right. Now, as far as some of the other coverage that you've done, I mean, you mentioned you write with Cover One, and I really like those guys. I like Eric Turner. I like Greg. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. Is it Tomset?
Yeah.
Yep, Greg Tomset. Yeah, and they're really great. I mean, I enjoy interacting with them on Twitter and stuff, and I know a lot of people in this area know who they are. They post a lot of really good X's and O's, film-wise, and analytics, a lot of data. I know Eric is a numbers guy for sure. He dives into the statistics, but talk about what that was like working with those guys, because I know that they make trips out to certain events and stuff for football, and they're really dialed in to the Buffalo Bills, especially.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're really expanding out to more everything, and, I know they got Dallas Cowboys, and, they got a few other teams they've been really looking at with different analysts, but they've been more Bill-centric. But, they're class act. They're awesome to work with. They're in the same mindset of me. Is they want to be educational and show people what they're looking at. So it's saying, okay, they got a touchdown. Great. Why did they get that? Why did they get the touchdown? What led to that? What was the play? How did the guy break off? Or so they like to break down everything that's going on, because it's easy to watch a football game and cheer for the winning team, but to understand why your team is successful is really the meat and potatoes behind what Cover One does. And then, of course, the analysis of just talking about it too. It's one thing to say, hey, here's it on film, but then to have other people that know more about the stuff and talk about it in greater detail, just across the board, it's great what Eric has built up, and then he's got some really good people working with him, and it's just fun to be a part of that, knowing that I can contribute my little bit that I can and say, hey, let's try to get this product even better than before. I want to do my thing independently, but I like to collaborate with them and others.
That's how I am too. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
And as far as we got a few minutes left here. So as far as collaborating with people, you've worked with them, and I feel like they are like, I really admire what they're doing. I eventually maybe I can get it kind of like what Joe Rogan does with the Joe Rogan Experience. He'll have one guy on, and they'll talk about other guys, and then he'll get that guy on. Eventually, me and Eric got to get together and make something happen. I wanted to actually do kind of like a person-to-person interview with like you and Eric and maybe Greg and maybe Ryan Talbot and Matt Perino from the UFC back in the day. Now he's back in Buffalo. I think there's such great content out there. And what's really cool is knowing the people that are producing that content are good people at the end of the day. Like that is, I feel like that is more, it holds more weight, that the interest in covering it is genuine, and it's not for, not even, I can say that for a good while I knew I wouldn't make a cent doing any of this stuff, and knowing that you're doing it and putting it out there and having a good time with it and educating, it's worth it. It's just worth it.
Yeah, so. I haven't seen a dime yet, but I don't need to in order to do what I'm doing there. But that's what makes it great, because then you get more quality content knowing that you're doing it because you're doing it for a good reason. But they'll say that for sports too. You're never satisfied, or you're playing for the love of the game, or whatever way you want to phrase it. As long as you're doing it for the right reasons, then you keep doing it. But as soon as it becomes about the money or other reasons other than the primary purpose, then you start looking at the quality of the product and whether the heart's really in it.
That's really so true, because Manny Machado just got a 10-year, $300 million deal. I'm questioning whether I should keep him on my fantasy team next year, because the Padres Park, Petco, if it's still called that, I think, is still a pitcher's park, and he's getting $300 million bills. So
you're never going to live up to that production. I mean, unless you're hitting 200 RBIs, 70 home runs, and 10 strikeouts, you won't hit that. It's just, I know those are crazy, unrealistic numbers, but yeah, you're being paid off past production, but you just can never live up to that.
Marv Levy had a great quote about free agents. He said, when you sign a free agent, you're often paying them for what they did for another team, not what they're going to do for you.
Correct.
And the Bills signed Spencer Long. Real quick here, what were your thoughts on that signing?
I think he's just another body right now. He might be an upgrade.
Right.
I think he, at this point right now, he's got to be an upgrade over Bodine, because Bodine just did not get the job done. Regardless of injury and whatnot, he just showed he could not get it done. It's amazing he held down the starting position down in Cincinnati for 4 years. And we thought Groy was going to be the answer. And he couldn't put it together, even though he did well covering for when Eric Wood was playing and was out with injury. So Spencer Long's obviously going to challenge those two, or if they get rid of Bodine, whatever they want to do. But I think he's just going to be another guy that kind of is a stopgap until they find somebody more long-term. Long's been in the league for a few years. He had the big finger injury last year, which I know that a lot of those guys want to play through injury and be the guy to get them where they need to be at. But from what I read, that Todd Bowles was kind of encouraging all that, which of course you see where Todd Bowles is at now. He's out of a job,
right,
or to have a head coaching job. But looking at Spindrelong's injury history, he's had some different some different injuries. Nothing that really stands out says, "Oh, it's a big problem." But I don't know that I don't think he's the answer.
I don't either. I think he is another body, and technically, the way I see it is he's going to compete.
Yes.
He's going to compete, and like you said, he'll compete. And his contract, Brandon Beane. I mean, this dude is a contract writing wizard. The stuff that this dude pulls out of his sleeve.